Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney snubs Washington, signals bold shift in first international trip, Paris and London, March 27, 2025. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney wasted no time after taking office, embarking on his first international trip, a swift but action-packed visit to strengthen Canada's ties with two of its closest allies, France and the United Kingdom. Notably bypassing Washington, Carney opted for Paris and London, raising eyebrows and critical questions. Why the detour, and what does it mean for Canada's economy and national security? The decision stems largely from escalating tensions between Canada and the United States over tariff policies. The Trump administration previously imposed steep tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, delivering a direct blow to Canada's industries. Estimates reveal that U.S. tariffs slashed Canada's export value to the U.S. by over 10% in 2024, a seismic shock for a nation heavily reliant on American trade. Yet rather than bowing to the pressure, Carney and his government rejected the status quo, choosing instead to forge a new path by expanding relations with Europe and Asia. This shift not only reduces Canada's dependence on the U.S., but also opens fresh economic opportunities. The lingering question, is this a strategic trade-off worth making, especially with the trade war showing no signs of abating? I want to ensure that France and all of Europe work enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, Carney stated in Paris. We're determined, like you, to maintain the most positive possible relations with the United States. French President Emmanuel Macron echoed this sentiment, calling Canada a reliable, trustworthy, and strong partner. But the situation grows more intricate as Carney voices concerns over the F-35 program, a cornerstone of U.S.-Canada defense cooperation. F-35, controversy, a potential NATO shakeup. The F-35 issue has sparked controversy, with Canadian officials worried about a kill switch in the fighter jet's software. This feature, designed to disable the jets in emergencies, could allow the U.S. to strip Canada of control over aircraft it has invested billions in. Should Canada abandon the F-35 program, the ripple effects could reverberate through NATO. A Canadian exit might weaken U.S. military influence within the alliance, prompting other nations to seek alternatives from Europe, such as France's Rafale or Germany's Typhoon systems. This isn't merely a defense matter, it's a potent political lever against America's allies. Rather than doubling down on Washington, Carney is rebuilding ties with Europe. In Paris, he met with President Macron to discuss economic and defense cooperation, culminating in a proposed $15 billion collaboration on defense and technology projects. This deal strengthens Canada's military capabilities independent of the U.S. In London, Carney held talks with UK leaders on financial partnerships and long-term post-Brexit strategies, a clear signal that Canada no longer views the U.S. as its sole partner. Arctic sovereignty, a brewing flashpoint. Another pressure point in U.S.-Canada relations is Arctic sovereignty. With climate change accelerating ice melt, the region is emerging as a battleground for resources and power. By 2050, the Arctic could hold 30% of the world's untapped oil and gas reserves, making it a hotspot for international disputes. Ottawa remains fiercely protective, opposing any U.S. actions it deems a threat to its national interests. This growing tension only deepens a relationship already strained by Trump's protectionist policies and divides over economics and defense. U.S.-Canada defense ties at a crossroads. With these developments, U.S.-Canada defense relations stand at a pivotal juncture. Canceling the F-35 contract could signal a fracture in their partnership, potentially prompting other NATO nations to pivot to European alternatives. Such a shift could reshape NATO's defense structure and erode U.S. leadership within the alliance. Trump's policies, a domestic and global wrecking ball. Meanwhile, Trump's policies are unraveling both America and its alliances. His 25% tariffs on imported aluminum and steel targeted major partners like the EU, Canada, and Mexico, sparking swift retaliation. The EU hit back with tariffs on American goods, 20% on cars, 25% on whiskey, and 30% on agricultural products, costing U.S. companies over $15 billion in revenue in the trade war's first year. Economists warn of rising inflation as consumer prices surged 12% over 2 years. Thousands of manufacturing jobs vanished, particularly in Midwestern states like Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin, while Trump's approval ratings in agricultural states dropped 9% amid retaliatory tariffs from China and Europe. Trump's assault extends beyond trade. He dismantled education, firing over 50% of the Department of Education's staff in a staged security emergency that permanently locked them out. Funding for programs supporting students with disabilities was cut by 40%, leaving 6 million children without aid. The school lunch program for low-income students lost 30% of its budget, prompting Texas, Florida, and Ohio schools to warn of shortages, teacher layoffs, and larger class sizes. Dropout rates among disabled students spiked 18% in just 6 months. This isn't budget cuts. It's a deliberate attack on equal access to education, a former official charged. Social welfare took an equally brutal hit. Trump slashed $880 billion from Medicaid, stripping health care from over 4 million of the 80 million low-income Americans it serves. He laid off 70,000 Veterans Affairs employees despite 19 million veterans needing care, and fired 7,000 Social Security Administration staff, causing massive delays in retirement and disability benefits. Wait times for disabled individuals doubled to 12 months, up from 6. "I fought for this country," one veteran said, "but now I have to fight just to get health care. Trump's abandoning us." America's awakening. Trust in Trump. Erodes Americans are waking up. Democratic lawmakers call it the greatest political scam in history, Trump posing as a working-class champion while his policies enrich billionaires. A new poll shows 45% of former Trump voters feel betrayed. Protests have erupted in Washington, New York, and Chicago, demanding an end to welfare cuts. The choice is stark. Let Trump and the Republicans dismantle the nation or fight back. Canada strikes back. An economic revolution. Canada isn't waiting for answers. Just 3 months after the U.S. election, over 90% of Canadians favor cutting trade ties with the U.S., spurred by Trump's incendiary claim, "Canada only works as a state." The response? A full-scale economic counterattack. Canada expanded its CETA agreement with the EU, boosting bilateral trade by 65% in months. Trade delegations fanned out across Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Ecuador, Singapore, Australia, Brunei, aiming to increase non-U.S. exports by 50% by 2025. The once U.S.-dependent Canadian economy is breaking free. Provinces are joining the fight. British Columbia banned U.S. agricultural imports like milk, chicken, and wine, while tightening border inspections of U.S. trucks, snarling supply chains. Quebec froze infrastructure contracts with American firms and launched a Buy Local campaign with government subsidies. Manitoba and Nova Scotia purged U.S. goods from public procurement, phasing out Starbucks, McDonald's, and Apple from schools and hospitals. Snap election, Canada's fight for survival. On April 28, 2025, Canada will hold an emergency general election, the fastest in modern history. Newly appointed PM Carney declared, "We eliminated the carbon tax for consumers, small businesses, and farmers to end division among Canadians. We're stronger together." He also reversed a capital gains tax hike to spur growth. Representing the Liberal Party, Carney insists Canada will never be part of America in any way, shape, or form. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, often likened to Trump, called annexation absurd and offensive, proposing tit-for-tat trade measures. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh went further, urging a ban on Trump attending the G7 in Alberta and a halt to strategic mineral exports critical to U.S. tech and defense. Public anger is palpable. At festivals and sports events, the U.S. anthem is booed and the flag shunned, a social movement signaling Canada's rejection of a subordinate role. The U.S. needs respect, not pressure, to bring us closer, one official noted. Europe fights back. Tesla and Trump falter. Across the Atlantic, Trump and Elon Musk are shaking Europe. Tesla's sales plunged 45% in January 2025 after Danish pension funds dumped $58 million in stock, citing labor disputes and Musk's far-right ties. Strikes in Sweden, Norway, and Finland paralyzed Tesla's operations, with ports refusing shipments. In the UK, 59% of EV buyers reject Tesla over Musk's alignment with Germany's AfD and Italy's nationalists. Volkswagen, Renault, and Chinese brands are gaining ground. Trump's Greenland gambit flopped too. On March 13, 2025, he told NATO's Mark Rutte, "We need it, and it'll happen." Danish PM Mette Frederiksen fired back, "Greenland's not for sale, part of Denmark, end of story." The EU and NATO agreed, slamming Trump's overreach.